It's actually very interesting. There have been several psychological studies about how much money it takes for people to be happy, to live in a way that makes them happy. And, people say money can't buy happiness. To a degree it can, but only to a small degree. Once you make about $60,000 a year, then more than that can increase your standard of living. It can buy you nicer furniture, a nicer house maybe, and a lot of people don't make as much as $60,000 a year. But once you reach that level, then additional funds are nice. They grant you additional security, but there's a limited degree to which additional dollars create additional utility for the individual past that point. Mm-hmm. It's just decreasing marginal utility of each dollar, of course.
Yes. I think for individuals who are assured a certain level of material comfort, a certain degree of stability, knowing that this day mm-hmm. isn't going to be their last, knowing that they will have a tomorrow and many days thereafter, there comes about a different need. And perhaps this is in parallel with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where Maslow discussed the need for self-actualization. I would prefer to call it a need for influence on the world, and that can be defined differently for different people. For instance, one person might say, I want to bring forth this great creation, a work of art, a work of literature, or many of them. Another
Some people
person
might want to raise
yes.
lots of children, for
yes.
example.
Yes, for another person it could be investing in human beings, raising children,
teaching or being a doctor, perhaps, mm-hmm. healing the sick. All of these are, I think, interesting ways of perpetuating the self in a world where immortality doesn't actually exist. It reminds me a little bit of Star Trek in the Next Generation universe, where everyone's basic needs are cared for. And they have that comfortable standard of living, much more comfortable than most people's standards of living today. They've eliminated hunger and poverty and so forth because of the absence of scarcity with the replicator. Wouldn't that be amazing to actually invent something like a replicator that could almost completely eliminate scarcity?
Yes.
It could move us hugely toward that goal.
Yes.
And remove the opportunity cost of struggling for things like food and shelter and funds and so forth, so that people could devote their energies toward the more important things.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think many people are mistaken in the view that any particular challenge is necessary for human fulfillment. Like if human beings don't have X to struggle against, then somehow their lives will be bland or boring or will not have any particular meaning. What they don't realize is that the true value of life does not come in struggling against something. It comes in making something of yourself, affecting the world in some manner. And one's ability to affect the world, affect one's own condition too, in some manner, doesn't depend on life being hard in some particular way.
I think you may assume that everyone has the same desires that you do. And I don't think that's true. I think there's a wide range of human wants and ways to interact with the world that may not be yours. It's very revealing what you think is most important, of course.
Well, all I'm saying really is hardship isn't necessary for human happiness or fulfillment in any sense.
A lot of people may want to go through life without actually putting much of an imprint on the world, or at least not in the same way that you want to put an imprint.
Well, they want to change something. It may even be just their immediate environment. It's
That's
a degree
true,
of emphasis on...
When you talk about putting an imprint, it almost implies an external imprint of some kind that other people will see and recognize and change their lives because of, So...
Well, it could just be an issue. It could just be an issue of making the world a better place to live in for oneself.
That's very
It
noble.
could be entirely selfishly motivated and be perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, there's no obligation to serve others in everything one does. However, I think...
Well, with things like scarcity of food or money eliminated, I think much of what one did would be more likely to help other people. Mm-hmm. You would have eliminated any chance of a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm. Yes, most conflicts, I think, however ideologically charged they may be, are essentially conflicts over resources and opportunities. And I think particular economic arrangements can bring about a state of affairs where people naturally gravitate toward friendly interactions because they have more to gain than they have to lose. And if the other person is different from you in whatever way they have different beliefs, different customs, different idiosyncrasies, but you see that you have something to gain from them being allowed to do what it is that they do, then peace results. But if there's no other contact except through these ideological differences, then it's very likely for those differences to break out into conflict.
It can depend. I think that the more expansive and cosmopolitan people's sense of the world becomes, helped along by something like the internet, the less likely they are to reject other people for their beliefs.